Alright guys, today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be graphing equations by making a table of values. So on number 1, they gave us y equals 2x plus 1. Now they want us to take this and represent it graphically, which means show what it would look like if I were to graph it on this number grid. But to do that, they want us to make a table of values. Now making a table of values is as easy or as hard as you make it out to be. Now I like to make things very easy, so I'm going to choose the easiest possible numbers that I need to use to substitute in. So first, the easiest number that I know is 0, which means I want to substitute a 0 in for my x value. Now, I'm going to substitute a 0 into my table, and then on my equation, we're going to substitute it in everywhere that we see the x. So you guys have some space down below your graph. We're just going to come over here and show this work. We're going to say y equals, and instead of 2x plus 1, we're going to substitute that 0 in there for x. So 2 times 0 plus 1. Now we're going to see what we get for our y value when we substitute that in. You can use your calculator if you need to, or you can do it in your head. I'm going to show you how to put it into your calculator, and then if you want to do it in your head, that's welcome. You're going to put it in exactly like you see it here, this 2 with the parentheses and the 0 and the plus 1. So we're going to say 2, open parentheses, 0, close parentheses, plus 1. That's saying 2 times 0 plus 1. And we get a result of 1 back. So when my x value is 0, it's going to give me a corresponding y value of 1. Now the next easiest number that I know is 1. So I want to substitute a 1 in everywhere that I see an x. So I'm going to come over here and say y equals 2 times 1 plus 1. Now this we can definitely do in our head. We could have done this one too, but let's do this one in our head. We're going to take 2 times 1, which gives me 2, plus 1 gives me a y value of 3. So if my x term is 1, it gives me a y value out of 3. Next, I'm going to substitute in 2. So y equals 2 times 2 plus 1. Well, 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. Next, we're going to do 3. Y equals 2 times 3 plus 1. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7. And then finally, let's do 4. Y equals 2 times 4 plus 1. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9. Next, what they want you to do is they want you to come plot these points on the graph. These are like ordered pairs, x comma y. So my first ordered pair would be 0 comma 1. So I want to go to 0 on the x-axis, which is here, and then 1 on the y-axis and put a point. Then we're going to go to 1 comma 3. So 1 on the x-axis and up to 3 on the y-axis and put a point. 2 on the x-axis and 5 on the y-axis and put a point. Then we're going to go over to 3 on the x-axis and 7 on the y-axis and put a point. And finally 4 on the x-axis and 9 on the y-axis and put a point. Now after you have all of your points plotted, what you need to do is get a straight edge. Now this could be a ruler, your school ID, your driver's license. It needs to be hard and flat and straight. You're going to line it up with these points here, and you're going to connect it with your straight edge. Now what's very important is your line needs to start outside of the grid and end outside of the grid. Notice how I start out here in the white space and I end out here in the white space. And we do not, I don't want to see any of this where it's just partly in the graph. That, to me, says that my line stops. Well, I don't want it to stop. I want it to go all the way through. And then we always need to end our line with arrows. That way we show this goes on forever and ever and ever in both directions. And here we have the graphical representation of y equals 2x plus 1. Now, what this does is this actually gives me back figures. Like if I said, well, if my x value was negative 2, what would my y value be? I could come over here to negative 2 and go down, and it would give me a y value of negative 3. Let's go to number 2, y equals 3x plus 4, or 3x minus 4. We're going to substitute in the same easy numbers. We're going to do that 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now remember, when you substitute in that 0 for x, you are going to substitute parentheses around it. So y equals 3 parentheses 0 minus 4. Now again, you can put that into your calculator, but let's do that in our head. What's 3 times 0 is 4, 3 times 0 is 0, minus 4 is negative 4. Next, we want to substitute in 1. 3 times 1 minus 4. 3 times 1 is 3, minus 4 is negative 1. Now we want 3 times 2 minus 4. 3 times 2 is 6, minus 4 is 2. Then 3 times 3 minus 4. 3 times 3 is 9, minus 4 is 5. And then we'll have 3 times 4 minus 4. 3 times 4 is 12, minus 4 is 8. Now that we've got all our numbers, let's come over to our graph and plot our points. So our first ordered pair is 0, negative 4. So 0 on my x-axis, and then negative 4 on my y-axis, and we'll put a point. Then we have 1 comma negative 1. So 1 on my x-axis, negative 1 on my y-axis. And then 2 comma 2, so to the right 2, up 2. 3 comma 5, to the right 3, up 5. 4 comma 8, to the right 4, up 8. Then take your straight edge, connect your points all the way through your grid, end with arrows. Make sure it starts outside and ends outside. Now on number 3, that's where things are a little bit different. On number 3, if you'll notice, we have a fraction involved. Now fractions can make things a little bit trickier to deal with because that's going to sometimes give us fractions as a result. To avoid that, we're going to change what x values we substitute in. That way we only get integers as our results. Now we still want to substitute in 0 because 0 is always a nice number to work with. But to figure out what comes after 0, I want you to look at the denominator. Here we have a denominator of 2, so we're, instead of counting by 1s, we're going to count by 2s. So we're going to substitute in 0, 2, 4, 6, and 8. So again, we have a denominator of 2. Let's count by 2s. What I want you to do is take a minute, pause the video, and substitute in just by writing, you don't have to do it in your calculator yet, what it's going to look like in the equation for each line. So if you'll notice, I've got all my equations here. I substituted in 0, 2, 4, 6, and 8. Now let's see what we get out. First of all, on my first one, 1/2 times 0, anything times 0 is just 0, minus 8 is negative 8. Next, I'm going to take half of 2. Well, half of 2 is just 1, minus 8 is negative 7. Next, I'll take half of 4. Half of 4 is 2, minus 8 is negative 6. Then half of 6 is 3, minus 8 is negative 5. And half of 8 is 4, minus 4 is negative 4. Now let's plot our points. So I have 0, negative 8. So to the right 0, down 8. 2, negative 7. So to the right 2, down 7. 4, negative 6. To the right 4, down 6. 6, negative 5. So to the right 6, down 5. 8, negative 4. To the right 8, down 4. Then connect it with the straight edge all the way through and end with arrows. On number 4, this time we have a denominator of 3, which means that I don't want to count by 2's over here. I want to count by 3's. So I'm going to start with 0, then go 3, 6, 9, 12. So if I substitute a 0 in, I'm going to get y equals negative 1/3 times 0 plus 2. This one's always the easiest. Anything times 0 is 0, plus 2 just leaves me with a 2. Then I have y equals negative 1/3 times 3 plus 2. This one might be a little trickier because it's harder to take a third of something, so if you need to use your calculator, we can say negative 1/3 times 3 plus 2, and we're going to get a result of 1. Next, I want to substitute in 6, so negative 1/3 times 6 plus 2. Well, in my calculator, notice I have that equation already. I just want to reuse that equation. So some calculators you can just push the up arrow and go back in and edit it. So I highlighted it, and I'm going to hit enter to bring it back down, and I'm going to hit the left arrow until I get to that 3, and I'm going to change it to a 6 and hit enter, and I get a result of 0. Then I want to substitute in 9. Y equals negative 1/3 times 9 plus 2. So I'm going to go back to my calculator, go over, and instead of a 6 this time, I want a 9, and we'll get negative 1. And then finally, I want to substitute in 12. Go ahead and pause the video and substitute 12 on your own. Alright, hopefully when you substituted in 12, you got the result of negative 2. Next, we just want to plot our points on our graph. So we started with a 0, 2, so to the right 0, up 2. Then 3, 1, so to the right 3, up 1. 6, 0, to the right 6, up 0. 9, negative 1, so to the right 9, down 1. And 12, 2. Now notice I can't go right 12 units on my graph. It doesn't go that far. So when that happens, just don't worry about that point. You don't have to plot it. Next, connect it with your straight edge and end it with arrows. Alright, that concludes this lesson. If you guys have any questions, make sure to ask.